Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we are at Hotel Europejski, one of the most expensive hotels in all of Poland. The secret to keeping such a prestigious status relies on preserving history and providing luxurious accommodation. Today we will learn more about one of the most exclusive jewels of Warsaw.
Our guest today is Mr. Ksawery Wąsowski, a direct descendant of Aleksander Przezdziecki, who decided to build Warsaw's first luxury hotel of international standards in 1855. After returning to Poland from the US in the early 90s, Mr. Wąsowski has been documenting the long and interesting history of Hotel Europejski.
One of the prominent figures in the family that runs this whole hotel, Ksawery, has his impact from the 1920s, as I believe, and I was wondering what is his background and what did he brought to the table, and how would he later on benefit the entire establishment as a whole?
Yes, Ksawery Wąsowski was indeed a prominent person. He was trained as agronomist, so he had his agricultural background, was a member of many societies, as I mentioned, various political activities that he, from a very early age, he was a member of. So as a manager, he was, what you would say these days, he had his head on straight. You know,
right.
he had a certain order, he knew what needed to happen. He was trained in Bonn. He was trained in Riga as a young man. So he had his international training, and he brought a lot of that knowledge here. When he married Zofia Przezdziecka in 1898 and joined the family that were the owners, and she being owner of half of the hotel, obviously that became a large component of what he was thinking about. So before 1921, when he formed the hotel company, there was obviously a lot that was thought about. One example, in 1920, when the various changes were taking place in the hotel, he was speaking to the owners of the future Czaska Ewert Michalski bookstore.
Right.
He suggested to them, look, you guys are looking for a spot. I have some empty space here, move in. That was before the hotel company was formed, so he was already active. Once the hotel company was active, and I mentioned before, he was instrumental in making sure that the produce, the wines, the gins, everything was top-notch and on a top international level. He also traveled the world, so he knew how things were. This was not someone trying to reinvent the wheel. He knew how things should run, how they should run smoothly, who to hire, top-notch people. So the people that are working actually in the hotel of the highest standard. This he wanted to pass on through his, let's say, designated heir for the hotel, Stefan Czetwertyński, to the point where he sent him off to the famous hotel school in Lausanne. Stefan was the first Polish graduate of that school before the war. So obviously the level of expertise as a future hotelier that you learn in that school, added to the experiences he had working at the Ritz in London and in Paris, was immense. And Stefan was ready to bring this to the table. Unfortunately, World War II happened. Stefan ended up as an officer of the Polish army in the Oflag for the duration of the war. And really his first active sole leading role in helping the hotel was during those 3 short years after the war, before the hotel was taken away. Even after that fact, which would have been a crushing blow to any person, his training and his dedication to that métier, this profession, was such that he wanted to pass on that knowledge. Poland was reconstructing everywhere. The hotel industry also, there was a new generation of people to be taught, and he was instrumental in doing so. He was working with the authorities in the hotel industry to write pamphlets, information booklets, to teach guidebooks for those young people. All this knowledge was passed on. Unfortunately, because of the political situation in the 50s and the fact that he was thrown in jail, put a damper on his future activities. Yeah. Interesting fact, in 1962, a very well-known guidebook for the hotel industry, Hotelash, came out, which does not have Stefan Czetwertyński's name at all. No. However, he was one of the largest authors of it, but his name was struck out completely.
How so?
Because he was not politically correct at the time, and he was, in fact, thrown out of the country 2 years earlier. His name was kind of shunned, put aside, left to be forgotten by the authorities here, not by the family. Obviously, he was very well known among the family. Right. Once he left Poland, he went and worked various places. He worked in Intercontinental in Geneva for many years, where he retired. So this was an authority figure that people in the know that remembered him always looked up to him. To the point when he came back in 1978, knowing he was dying of cancer, he wanted to die in Poland, and he made some visits here, and at one point he was in a Hotel Bristol in the dining room, and waiters that worked with him previously recognized him, and they were so happy to see him. They almost had tears of joy coming. So that respect was there. Well, hopefully his knowledge was passed on to generations.
Mr. Wąsowski visited the hotel for the first time in 1987, 2 years before the fall of communism. However, at the time, he wasn't aware that Hotel Europejski had been owned by his family. The process to have it returned to their family lasted around 15 years, but ended successfully.
One of the things that I noticed about the place is indeed the family touch that you were talking to me about. It feels really personal, and I can see that the family spirit still passes on through you, I would say even. And I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about yourself and the contributions and how you came to discover this place belonging to the family and kind of made it what it is today.
I didn't make it, I just cut the bug of what it was.
Right.
It's an interesting story. I arrived in Poland for the very first time in my life in 1987. Still communist times. I was driven by a gentleman, a long trip through West and East Germany, and we arrived in Warsaw. He invited me for lunch, and we parked in front of the Europejski. I had no clue what this place was. We walked in, old building, large restaurant, and he says to me in English, a Polish man, but he says in English, "Be careful, the waiters here are spies and they listen to you, so be careful what you say." I thought, where did he take me? This place is very strange. My first communist country, and so it made a huge impact, and it piqued my interest. I had no clue that this once belonged to the family.
Right.
I only found this out several years later, once communism ended, and my grandmother was saying, we got to get this property back, amongst which she mentioned Hotel Europejski. So once I decided to follow this roots in my heart to Poland and actually move here, only then did I realize, okay, this is the building. And I remember this is the building where the spying waiters were listening to me. So there was an irony there. And over the years, when we were getting it back, there were other cousins, uncles, members of my family who dealt more with trying to get it back, aunts too. In 2005, when we finally got it back, I decided I'm quitting my profession in advertising, and I'm going to devote my time as a lover of history and of family and architecture and all these aspects. Felt like I'm in the right place in the right time. This is meant for me, and this is my role. For now, this is my function to bring this history back. It was lost, it was destroyed during the war. Orbis didn't really give much as far as information about the history. So we have to reconstitute it. So that became my mission in life. And for the past 14 years, I've been collecting now literally in the thousands of pieces of information, whether it be my own collection or in the collections of museums, archives, or libraries. So that became the spirit of what I'm trying to pass on through the album, which will be published soon, about the history of the hotel, which will be very richly illustrated, and hopefully many anecdotes that will liven the place. So when guests walk through the door, this place is alive, and they see the spirit of people that were here before, and they feel it. So that's my mission in life now.
Hotel Europejski has 150 years and counting of very interesting history. And the fact that the history is preserved and the personal touch of the place is what gave it the standard for the best hotel in Poland and has set the standard ever since. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.